Sure. Okay. Hello, welcome to the June Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Board meeting. I'd like first order of business is to call the order. I just did it. So before we sorry, brave. Moving forward, before we move to approving the agenda, I'd actually propose that we add an item to the agenda, item 7D. It's changeover number 4 for the Beltline Mississippi River Branch Outfall Replacement Project. So that's going to be item 7D. Second thing of note, although it doesn't adjust the agenda as written, I would like to add our discussion on the Minnesota Watershed resolutions that was sent out in an email by Jan, just to hold a discussion around it so we can give feedback on item 9. So for discussion topics, we're going to talk through the resolutions. Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. All abstain say abstain. Okay, moving forward, consent agenda. These should be approved under one motion. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussions or questions regarding the content that do not change your vote, or discussions or comments? Okay, I had one. Honestly, the 2516 is more of a comment. I really like how it was written. There's certain specific things in there where it talks about the outcome and what we're trying to achieve. I really liked the way this one was written.
With that number.
Oh, I'm sorry, 25. Oh, it's on regulatory. Sorry, that's down below. Yeah. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. All abstain say abstain. Moving forward to visitor comments. So
I don't believe anybody is here for visitor comments, but
perfect. So let's move to the regulatory program.
yes.
Okay.
That happened quicker than I expected.
Yeah, so we have, actually I should first say for Gretchen's benefit that's listening online, I assume she's here for the Iron Gate permit. It's easy to miss, but that project was included on consent, so your project was approved, and I will follow up with you tomorrow. But feel free to stay on as long as you like. Just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So a couple of permits that were not on consent this evening. We already Sal kind of started talking about this. 2516, it's a Ramsey-Washington led project related to flood risk reduction in the Coleman Creek subwatershed. That does include a variance to the way that our rules are written. However, I would argue that the proposed improvements meet the intent of our rules, both for flood control and stormwater management. But I'm happy to talk through that variance. The reason for the variance is to remove a restrictor plate that was installed actually by us last year to maximize the flood risk benefit for the County Road C area. And then some fill in the floodplain, which is the purpose of which is to construct flood control berms to protect habitable structures. But as the letter of our rules are written, would require a variance. All proposed improvements do not cause an adverse risk to the channel or to habitable structures in the area.
As I said earlier, I like how this one was written. It was really easy to follow.
Yeah.
And I know it was ours, and I'm not just trying to compliment our work, but I just I like the order of it.
Okay.
I don't have any comments. Anyone here have questions or comments?
I have a couple things.
Yeah.
The first, there was some mention in the stream down gradient of some bank cutting, some erosion, and almost the focus of this. Most recent project will be closer up to where the culvert was replaced. I'm just curious if there's been any thoughts about possibly doing some stream restoration work in the little outside of the project specifically, but
Yeah, I mean, for this project it is, but that is something that is on our work plan is to do we do our biannual walkthroughs of the creek. And that's something that BAR and district staff are going to be looking at as opportunities for restoration of that creek. So that is definitely one.
glad to hear that. The second question, more specific, relates to this project. It's 101 figure 8. There is, that figure shows, and this comment was made in the text as well, that there will be a, lack of better terminology, slight increase in the typical flow following events near the culvert replacement. So within the first couple hundred feet down on the sea. And I'm just curious if, because that is a change from the current flow regime, is that, somebody kind of just characterize following the event, it's gonna flow faster, more, fuller within the bank, though that it has historically, but it's not going to have a detrimental flood effect. Is that?
Absolutely. So following the project, or following the removal of that plate, there will not be a change in the 100-year peak discharge rate velocities downstream. The increases in discharge or velocity that we're talking about with this variant are for the 2-year and the 10-year, the more frequent events. And for those events, what we anticipate seeing is there is going to be a small duration during the event. Will there be higher velocities? We looked at the increase in those velocities relative to the vegetation that's growing on those banks, and we believe that the vegetation is sufficient to prevent any adverse erosion scour downstream of that culvert as it is today. But we want to acknowledge that there are localized locations of bank failure sloughing, and so that's an area that staff will be keeping an eye on following the project. The reason we didn't expand the project at this point in time is we also, as Tina mentioned, we want to complete those creek walks so that we know that as we prioritize those creek stabilization projects, we're doing so with information on the broader picture. So for this particular project, we don't believe that there's an immediate need to do anything with downstream of that culvert, but to your point, it's an area that we will be watching and gathering data on here in the upcoming months.
From a stream quality standpoint, increased velocity, increased flow might actually not be a bad thing as long as it's not causing any erosion downstream from a fish connectivity and so forth.
To your other point, and I want to make sure I respond to it, is that there are no adverse impacts downstream from a flood risk perspective. Yeah, there's no changes in the 100-year. The very small changes we're talking about in the more frequent events are all off of residential property, so there's no changes in the extents, essentially, of those floodplain extents that we managed to.
Just to make sure that I follow, what venue would we see the proposed creek enhancements? Is that through the inspection process that we do?
Yeah, well, we had money in our feasibility study for this year to look into a more substantial look at restoration work on those features. Following our traditional inspection process.
That adds some more beauty. I was looking for. Okay. Good questions. Any further questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve permit 2516 Coleman Creek flood risk reduction with St. Paul Maplewood?
I will motion.
Wonderful. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussions or questions? Wonderful. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. Okay, 2516 passes. Moving to 2517, the Excel ECL renewal.
Yeah, this project is located towards the southern end of our district, east of Pig's Eye Lake in St. Paul and Maplewood. Excel is proposing to install a gas casing line via trench methods within the existing roadway. There will also be some directional drilling that would take place under Highway 10. So the variance is probably seems new to the board for stormwater management. However, it's a result of our language changes as of the last rule change. So historically, utility projects like Excel was exempt from stormwater management. And, you know, taking into account that they don't own the right of way that they're working in. So, you know, historically, they've just been exempt from Rule C. However, we changed some language 2 years ago to close some other loopholes that were unrelated to this. But now, as the letter of the rule is written, would require a variance for stormwater management. They're not proposing to change the roadway at all or any grading, no impacts to wetlands or floodplain.
Can I summarize real quick, Nicole?
Yeah.
Just, so what wasn't, or maybe ask a question and then I wasn't clear on the rule C due to lack of ROW. Are those connected?
Yeah, lack of right of way ownership. So they don't own the property that the project's taking place. They don't own that roadway.
Is that part of the new language that we added? It was
No.
very significant. The right of.
Yeah, so the language that used to exempt these projects had to do with utility replacement. And we took that out because it was being misconstrued or misused by some permit applicants.
Okay.
So we, took that out to close that loophole.
So it didn't have anything to do with the right of way type of thing. This is part of the
No.
utility.
No,
That's what I was just curious.
I think the
about.
mention of the right of way, lack of ownership is the justification for the variance
Thank
request.
you. That
Yeah.
helps me. Okay.
Yeah, those bulleted points are the reasons that they're asking for approval of the variance. So again, no increase in impervious area, no really change in the roadway or contours.
That's how it reads. Is
Yeah.
There's no real change. This is they're putting in utility.
Yeah, they're cutting a trench in the road, repaving over it. Yeah.
Any further questions? Do I have a motion to approve permit 2517, the Excel ECL renewal?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Wonderful. Any further discussions or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Abstain say abstain. Okay, permit 2517 passes. Going to your regulatory summary.
Yeah, we have violations. We did add violations towards the end of the month after this went out. We've been getting some larger rain events, so it has been a challenge on construction sites of recent weeks. But I also listed our meetings. We were, trying to focus on some drawdown inspections because we're getting some vegetation growth. So that's one good thing from the rain. To eventually close out some permits. So that's kind of what we highlighted this month, but happy to answer any questions.
And the wetland mitigation TEP discussion for the Heights. Do you have a brief summary for that?
Yeah, so we met with the developer and the their consultant, Ron, following the board meeting, following the board discussion, just so that we could all be on the same page. Did we all hear the same thing from you? To make sure that it was understood what they need to look at and what they need to bring forth for a replacement plan. So just kind of, I actually listened to the recording again to make sure I didn't miss anything from the board discussion, but it was really just a summary to make sure we were on the page following their visit last month.
Okay.
And subsequently, we met with the city of Adams Heights as well. That again, that was after this went out, but just to kind of outline the same things, basically. What the board's concerns were, what alternatives that, what additional information that the board and staff and the TEP are requesting before we can give any kind of assurance approval. So it's very much no promises made. Yeah.
Do you have a sense of when they're shooting to come back?
They have resubmitted another alternative that lessens wetland impacts. But I think we're gonna have still the same questions about suitability for mitigation, because there's still none of that geotech, none of the stormwater, groundwater information available.
Okay.
But on paper, it's encouraging. Is it constructible is another question, so. But they are showing that they're taking seriously the board's recommendations and different things to look at, like trying to reduce the footprint of the surface parking. I think they added another story to the building, so yeah, they're certainly taking it seriously.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention last week. I think it was good to engage in this way. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know, Paige or Tina, you want to add anything? But that was good.
And just a quick follow-up, kind of the same theme on that heights
Yeah.
mitigation, wetland mitigation. Getting everybody kind of on the same page, status, is everything kind of proceeding as we had expected?
Well, there's more water in the wetlands than we anticipated. I guess that's better than less water than we needed, but yeah, we're, Bolton and Mink is their consultant, and they're trying to figure out the best way to restore it via seed, because there is still more standing water than they anticipated. But the purpose of the meeting this month was really to talk about what the TEP's performance standards would look like for the upland areas. So, they might be starting to seed those areas first. And hopefully the water comes down. I know that the water was artificially high for a while because we were wanting to prevent any offsite impacts from construction activity. So I think it's still higher though than they thought, because that outlet restriction's been removed now, but.
As development proceeds and there's more likely impervious, it's likely it's not gonna go down, but possibly go up.
Well, none of the permanent stormwater practices are in yet, so that may or may not be true.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Really up to. Any further questions for Nicole? Awesome. Jump into stewardship grant programs. That's actually.
I'll note that we did have Karen Hildebrand join in. Karen, just as an update for you, your application was on the consent agenda and approved. So I'll be following up with an approval tomorrow.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. I just got off work, so I wanted to join in here, but thank you so much. I will drop back off then. Thank you.
All right. And then, sorry. So then, stewardship grant application 25-32, yes. This is Nathan and Jamie Price. Jamie is here to speak after I give a little introduction as well. So I'm located off of Ederson Street along Drivers Creek, not too far from the office, proposing a shoreline restoration. The current bank conditions are a partial retaining wall that is failing and crumbling, and then a couple of attempts to try and hold that structure in place, as well as some actual open erosion with some vegetation and trees falling and leaning over the creek. Staff is recommending maximum funding under the current grant program, which would be 15,000 at 100% coverage. They have requested that the entire cost of the project be funded, which is 26,783. And so based on past criteria and past variances that the board has approved and current criteria of the grant program, staff do recommend keeping it at the $15,000 mark. It is a great project in that it is restoring a shoreline that has the potential to continue failing and is failing in some spots. But beyond that measure, it's not providing additional water quality or rate control or runoff reduction. There is a little bit of background. I can answer any questions on that stuff, if there is any.
There was mention that, and I don't think it's something bring your discussion. Several feet of shoreline have already been lost.
That is, yeah, that's what the homeowners have said.
Would you like to talk?
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Jamie Price. My husband Nate and I live at 3728 Edgerton. And he was not able to be here tonight, but I would like to share just a few remarks that we prepared, so bear with me. So our hope is that this committee will reconsider their recommendation of $15,000 maximum for the grant to instead cover the full cost and repair of alteration to our shoreline to prevent future erosion and damage, which ultimately positively impacts the entire watershed. The stormwater drainage that runs through Jarvis Mill Creek benefits the elementary school and almost every business and residence located along Bill Canada Road. This includes the new construction and homes that are being built directly across the street from our residents. The creek serves as runoff for all the stormwater to prevent flooding for all the parties mentioned. It also captures much of the runoff from Edgerton Street, which is of course a county road that benefits the communities it. We believe as a result of the shifting water levels and flow over the years that this has ultimately really impacted our shoreline. So we've lost several feet of our property due to erosion from water drainage, water flow in Jarvis Mill Creek since we moved into our house nearly 10 years ago. We have 2 mature cherry trees that are planted along the creek that used to have several feet of shoreline between the base of the tree and the creek. The roots are now exposed and both trees are leaning towards falling into the creek. It has also contributed to collapsing parts of our rock wall that serves to protect against shoreline erosion, and amongst the most concerning impacts for us as homeowners, it's impacting the structural integrity of our deck. We don't believe that we should be responsible for the cost of repairing, altering our shoreline that has been negatively impacted as a result of shifting water levels and flow over the years, and has ultimately benefited many others that are located upstream. So according to Minnesota statutes, chapter 103E, repair costs can be split pro rata amongst everyone who benefits from using that drainage system, which in this case is multiple parties. Our request is the staff reconsiders the stewardship grant amount to cover the full estimated around $27,000 for the cost of the project. We've explored petitioning a repair request pursuant with Minnesota statutes, chapter 103E, to the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District for our impacted shoreline should our request be declined, but know that that's something that we're obviously open to discussing. So we just really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight and appreciate just consideration of this group. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Ashley, do you want to maybe mention some of the materials and one of the other reasons for not funding the full amount was because of the materials used?
Yep, so in general, riprap is not actually a material that is grant eligible, which it's over is pretty much half of the current cost of the project, which would actually bring down rough funding to about 14,000. But because of the existing conditions with the existing kind of structure failing, we had kind of talked with how can we armor it without disrupting it more, and we figured between homeowner desires to kind of keep the riprap and then just tight working corridors, it made sense that riprap was going to be the most feasible in this area, which is why we did decide that would be an eligible item in this application. It is not typically. We do like to see those kind of full native restoration with either live plant stakings. And there's some other bioengineering methods, but combination of site restrictions and homeowner requests, we balance that out and meet that halfway mark, included the riprap.
Would y'all mind giving a brief overview of the maintenance of that culvert and what our modeling data has shown in terms of flows?
The upstream culvert or the downstream culvert?
The one near the house, I'm not quite sure what that is.
That
Might be up
culvert is not been touched.
So Ramsey
Dave
County,
would know.
Ramsey County property culvert, that doesn't belong to the watershed. There was been some carp maintenance on the upstream side. There was on the upstream side as well, Jarvis Mill Pond, removed the grates that were going in there, but that's all that I know about that.
What's the location of the upstream one?
I was trying to figure it out on the map.
The last pond, but in the Jarvis.
Where it goes under Edgerton?
Yeah, so on, what is this, page 115 in the packet, as you're looking up towards the house, there's a dark kind of shadow. And that would be right where that culvert is. So it's coming out. There is a large eddy that has been there for quite a long time that actually swings out towards their property. And so they did share a video of like when we had the big rainstorm a few weeks ago. It did actually show kind of slower water moving along their side and the water rushing faster on the far side, which has more of a gradual slope down to the water level itself.
Is that page 117?
Yeah, that was it. The video is from the same rain event, which does show the culverts on page like 118 and 119. So you can, the way the water kind of directs, it does run out on that north side of the creek opposite of the property, which is good in this instance. So considerations that staff are also taking into effect is the actual hydraulics of the channel.
And so that upstream one is one that we would inspect in our creek blocks, but not, that would be one where we would
That's what
say
I'm trying to
Ramsey
understand
County,
before
there's
it's-
maintenance needs on that. I don't know if there is maintenance needs
No.
or not.
No.
No.
And then downstream is Keller Parkway.
There's Keller Parkway, which was a capital improvement project. I believe, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was final installation project wrap up was 2022.
3 years ago.
And we did, Brandon did double check numbers and modeling last fall, just to make sure that something didn't slip through the cracks or anything. So that that culvert did increase the cross-sectional area, so there would be no backup onto property or increased erosion due to that culvert replacement. And then I don't know if it's relevant, and maybe Lauren can speak to it too, but for Jamie's sake, the 103E is not a statute under which I believe this office runs as a drainage authority. So that's a different statute that we don't have jurisdiction.
Yes, that's correct. 103E applies to drainage systems, ditches, really. It's kind of what I think of it as the ditch statute. And yet the district wouldn't have jurisdiction under that statute.
To start, I'm sorry. I understand it's frustrating. I can tell you, having lived through and living near water, having had something similar occur to my property, I understand the stresses that you're under. As I look at this and what we're trying to do, I personally don't know. I understand why riprap is the preferred approach. And I do like the idea of doing our best to maximize the dollars that we can give you. Part of me still feels that the 15K with what we're trying to do is cool, but I want to leave it open to the board to also weigh in on their talks. I want you to know I sympathize because I have also experienced that.
Yeah, I appreciate all of the information that's been prepared both by staff and both by you, Jamie, and your husband. So for reading through all of that and hearing your statement, I guess I would also
recommend, I agree with the recommendation from staff that we fund you for 15,000.
I would want to make sure as we do our creek walks, talk about erosion. We figure out what our policies and mechanisms need to be there.
And well, I'm going to say one more thing. I do think that with the addition of the plantings on that side, that I hope that will help stabilize as well.
I have one question. You mentioned that you've been in the home for about 10 years. Was that the home previously there? So you're the second or third or?
Second homeowners, yes.
And in the project proposal, when you guys walked out there, you assessed and riprap seemed like it was potentially a good solution. There was some discussion about our more typical native vegetation, but given it's a very narrow swath there. That native vegetation would still be a part of the project
Yes.
on top of the riprap, I assume.
Yeah, it would
Above
be
it.
a buffer, and we did recommend immediately after that site visit, like stop mowing all the way to the edge, whatever you can do to kind of stay back. So they've been really receptive to those ideas, and the native buffer, I think, will definitely help. That area is kind of not super soggy like you'd kind of, but it's definitely softer materials, and that native logs would help a lot.
Is there any discussion about some other techniques to engineer fabrics or gabions or other such things that would help stabilize and then plant into?
Yeah, we did. There's the pictures, I don't feel like do it quite justice. We're talking, like, you can't fit a skid steer between the deck footing and the edge. Not even, yeah, you couldn't even walk a dingo behind it. Like, it's a very narrow area. And so to even bring any material in is gonna be a lot of, if not all of the work will have to be in the creek itself. And so that balance of minimizing as much, minimizing earth disturbance, one from actual being in the creek work, and also the house is not too far from these deck footings either. And so from a earthwork perspective next to structures, and neither our designer or myself being PEs, we weren't comfortable designing anything that would require that kind of pull the landscape back to put a structure in. As it stands, to put any material, most of the vegetation you see that's on the creek side of the boards, that's mostly just vegetation. There's not land that's necessarily extending out into that. So there's not space to actually pull the landscape back and install any kind of like engineered structures. Could it be done? Maybe. It isn't something that we were comfortable designing, or that from a cost perspective wouldn't necessarily make sense, particularly because directly downstream of here is more riprap along the shoreline.
Does this creek bed have an established OHW?
Yes.
Could you help me with that acronym? Ben?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the ordinary high water line, and it's established by the DNR. So are you taking the riprap out to that OHW? Or are you stabilizing behind it?
Yeah, I think if it's marked on the plans, then it would be. We might not have it marked, but essentially we're just maintaining the existing toe.
So was the DNR ever consulted about additional fill to help create a more balanced toe?
No, at this point they have not been.
I guess that would be my only other comment before moving forward, is they may look at it as a positive.
DNR.
Anything below the OHW would require a DNR permit to do any additional fill, but to help stabilize the shore, they may allow that. I just wanted to know if that was considered or pursued.
Was there any discussion about a possible phased project? Obviously, you're interested in the immediate, kind of your retaining wall and that narrow swath, but you're mentioning that there is riprap down gradient of that as well, that would have the potential of a shoreline restoration as a, you know, a separate phase. I'm just wondering if that concept was maybe discussed.
The existing riprap downstream is another landowner.
Okay.
So, and that's not something that was discussed. Typically, we're not doing grant projects for, or at least not 100% funding for riprap removal and restabilization. The priority in the grant program being trying to find those properties where we're holding active erosion back versus, you know, a riprap shoreline is going to have erosion already kind of prevented, and to remove the riprap is great. We love to see the native shoreline restorations, but it's just typically been less of a priority to restore and stabilize shoreline versus targeting unstable shorelines. So, balancing it across the district and other projects, but that's why we're bringing it to you guys to make that decision.
Leave the quiet for a little bit. Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion? Let's see, this is a motion to approve 2532 at the $15,000 as recommended. Is that correct? Is that how I would do the motion?
Mhm.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, just as a, any comments or questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. All abstained say abstain.
I'll see.
You abstain. Okay. Okay. So Jamie, 2532 passed at 15,000.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Okay. Budget status update.
We're about halfway through the year. Actually, about halfway through the year. We're about over half the way through the budget. So, staying on par. We did see a decent little uptick between last month and this month. But otherwise, I'll take any questions. Not too much to highlight.
All right, no questions. Anyone else have a question? Okay.
Well, I'm wondering if we could have, do John's item. So he
I,
doesn't.
I think he's enjoying sitting. No, come on up, come on
Yeah,
up.
you can come sit at the table.
Yeah. You number 10, so
I think Paige can intro it, so yeah.
we don't need any kind of motion to jump around the agenda, correct?
No.
Correct.
Good, all right. Yeah, so we have John Vallata here, who is the administrator for the Minnesota Stormwater Research Program. I've been sitting on the board for, gosh, I think I started early 2024 for the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council, which helps to review proposals and set guidelines and priorities for the year for the projects. Great group of people on that council, and you saw the hopefully the link to the reports in the board packet, and then John brought hard copies too. But John is here to talk about what happened last year and answer any questions that you have.
I'll pass it. Do people want any paper copies? I carry these around with me, so I didn't print them just for you, so I keep a stack in my car. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be back in the district. The primary purpose for me being here is to say thank you to the district for supporting the Stormwater Research Council over the last calendar year, but since its inception, which I'll talk about just in a brief couple comments. But first, a personal story for those of you who don't know me. I grew up here right down the road. I spent my entire childhood on Keller Lake, and I grew up there, and I swam in Jarvis Lake, and I ate most of my protein out of Spoon Lake over the years. So I'm back home here, and so the work of the district has been very personally rewarding for me to see for the decades. So thank you for all your efforts too. So the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District has helped financially support the work of the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council since its inception, and not only financially, but provide a lot of brain power to it as well. Paige now serves on the board. There's a 20-member advisory board for the work that we do. And you may or may not know this, but the birth of the Research Council probably happened right here in this room, under probably around the mid-2000s with Cliff. And we formally established in the year 2016. And so we're coming up on 10 years with the Research Council. The purpose of the Research Council is to answer questions we have about stormwater practices and management in communities for public and private practitioners. So we can prevent, minimize, and mitigate our impacts from urban stormwater runoff. You all know this is the district. But can we take our practices that we use and make them more effective, more efficient, and make sure we're selecting the best practices for the right places in the right location? And we know that we have questions about that, or research questions and things that we need to answer. And so the Research Council invests into research projects to get at some of these questions that we've been asking. So that's the purpose of the council. And the Watershed District has helped financially support those research projects. And so I just wanted to give you a flavor. Everything's in the report. I'm not going to talk about what's in there. You can peruse at your discretion. We have funded 46 research projects since 2016. 30 of those are now complete. We have 16 active projects. So I'll give you an example of what your money bought you last year for example. We just finished a project on March 30th. The first iron enhanced sand filter, if I'm not mistaken, was installed here, right outside of Maplewood Mall. We just finished a research project looking at metadata analysis of as many iron enhanced sand filters the research team could get data for. They just finished that project on March 30th. We're going to talk about those results in mid-July with a big seminar coming up this fall. So that's an example of one of the projects that we're looking at, or did look at. The next project that will happen as a result of that will start here on July 1st, where John Gulliver and his team are going to look at alternative sources of iron and other alternative sources to go in sand filters to work in lieu of iron. So we're continuing to look at some of these questions on those practices. I know the district has been looking at stormwater ponds. It's our most proliferous practice across the state. We're looking at ponds. In fact, about half of our research budget goes into stormwater pond research right now. One of the research projects that you helped fund last year was a rapid assessment tool for stormwater ponds. So we could help city practitioners and private engineers look at ponds rapidly to assess their function and how they're performing. It's called a pond assessment tool. So version 2 of that was published on March 31st, and we've done a number of trainings on that. So that's an example of something. But we've invested in 6 new pond research projects that will start July 1st. For example, one of the things we're finally going to tackle, this is one of my favorites. Are we spending electricity just to put water up in the air through aerators for no particular reason? We're going to look at pond aeration. HOAs and many other public and private institutions like to put aerators in. We actually do not know if they do anything for water quality. We'd like to believe that. We're going to find out. We've been trying to fund this research for about 3 years. So I'm very happy that's one of the research projects that we will start on July 1st. do pond aerators do anything for water quality? Or are we just doing that for aesthetic reasons? So those are some of the things that we've been doing with your support. And so I thank you for that. And the entire Research Council supports, thank you for that too. The other part that we do, research is not good if it sits on a shelf. So a big part of our effort is technology transfer, to do seminars, to do workshops with practitioners with the research results. One thing you might have heard about is our new Clean Sweep training program. And, you know, Ramsey-Washington has been involved with this from the get-go. And we have about 10 years in street sweeping research. You know this, with that we don't do street sweeping to make them look pretty. We do that as a pollution prevention strategy. And so now we have enough body of research to be able to train communities to develop street sweeping programs that enhance their water quality benefit. And there's a lot of factors, you know, that go into that, from how often we drive a street sweeper, what type, what do we do with the materials, you know all this. And so now what we've done is develop a training program for communities so they can develop enhanced street sweeping plans in their communities. The ever popular Minnesota Stormwater Seminar Series that happens every month, that is something that we do to get the research out to practitioners. On average, about 150 practitioners participate in that seminar every month. So last year we had over 1,800 participants. So we're getting the information that you are helping us generate out to those who can best use it. So thank you for your support over the years, especially in 2024. I hope we can continue to have you as a partner. The Research Council set a goal for 2025 to assemble $250,000 from watersheds, private businesses, and cities. As of last night, we're about 109,000 into that. So that's quite good for June 1st. And so I'm sure that, you know, in the few months we'll get towards our goal of. And so we've continually grown that. I think that's reflected on the last page of the annual report there. And we couple your contributions to the Research Council with funding that we get from the Clean Water Fund. So this year we were awarded $1.6 million for the next biennium. So we will couple that. We also have a new financial partner with Minnesota Sea Grant out of Duluth. And so they're partially funding some of our research projects. And last but not least, the goal of this was kind of like our retirement portfolios, is always diversify our research funding, not just depend on one watershed district, one city, not just depend on just state funding. And so Minnesota was selected as one of the National Stormwater Centers of Excellence. And so despite everything that's happening at the national level, we did receive a $1 million reward to continue the research from the Environmental Protection Agency. Our research is going to be partnered with the University of New Hampshire. We're focusing on cold climate stormwater BMP research. And so we'll be collaborating with them. So we're diversifying and bringing a lot of funding into Minnesota to do this work and continue on our journey. And the Research Council will continue. I think we will have exponential growth for the next few years. So with that, I hope you have a chance to peruse the annual report, and I can take any questions. And
in addition to the cold weather BMP research,
yeah,
what other, not on the 16, are you excited about looking at?
Okay, so I'll oversimplify this.
That's good.
Yeah.
Speak down to me.
The through the Environmental Protection Agency offered an opportunity to fund up to $5 million to establish up to 5 national stormwater centers of excellence to do research. There were 26 applications last year. Minnesota, New Hampshire were selected 1 out of 4. So very competitive, very rewarding to us. Because of the work we've done at the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council, I am confident that's one of the reasons why we were selected. Very competitive. So the research that we had to propose as part of this application had to be multi-state. And we've done a lot of work with New Hampshire in the past. Something we have in common is cold climate BMPs. And so we focused on that. And in our application, we further focused on 2 very specific pieces. Chlorides and their impacts on bioretention, something from the district. And the other piece is looking at chloride training programs or reduced salting programs and the impact and efficacy they truly have on reducing salt use. Those are the two things that we're gonna fund in the first part of this national center. Thank you.
So, thank you. I am a fan of the stormwater seminar, so I'm one of those who log on a regular basis. But two questions. The first one is short. You mentioned the pond assessment tool. Is the district trained on that?
Are we trained on that? No, not on that particular tool, I don't believe. Not any, I don't know if you've had any specific training.
I can't remember who was all at the training. The training we did was March 14th. We had a full room at Sapple, so there were 40 or 50 people there. We could certainly tell you if there were any district people.
I was just, I mean, I'm not curious.
Yeah.
About who specifically,
Yeah.
but I guess the more general question,
Yeah,
are we
right.
ready to use it?
Yeah, we'll need to check in on that.
And I suspect some of the work the district has done has probably been at that level or greater. And as I know you've been looking at ponds, right?
Mhm.
And so.
And then my second question is following up on what Val asked is, of all the research that's coming through or has been completed, what are those results that you think everyone should be doing, but we're not the uptake isn't there?
Oh, that's a big question. Lots of different projects. Like, but trying to come up with a couple of really good examples.
She didn't limit you to one.
Yeah, okay. We've invested a lot of research dollars to the Research Council in bioretention over the last 10 years. Two major discoveries, and that is media, which media mixes will support infiltration, plant growth, and pollution capture. And one media will do one of those, the other two not so well. And so coming up with that right media mixture is something that we have focused on. I think Andy Erickson and his group and other research studies we've gotten there. And so I think the adoption of new media mixes is probably one of the biggest steps that we're going to have to make as an industry, right? So that's one. The second one, which hasn't been published widely yet, but under drains just don't work. And we often don't need them. And so that's probably the other thing. Andy just spoke to me about that yesterday. We put under drains in biofiltration systems for the last decade plus as a safety mechanism mostly, and they're not needed. I think that will result in a change of practice. So that was bioretention. Ponds, we don't know a lot about how ponds are performing. And every time we peel back the layer of this onion, we're discovering other questions that we have. What I'm hoping to do within 2 to 3 years is we know enough about ponds that we can start doing some changes in design and operation maintenance. We know some simple things right now, but not the real complex things. What else? Maybe I'll stop there.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I'll preface with stormwater has two components.
Excuse me?
Stormwater has two components. Stormwater concerns have two components.
Yeah.
Water quality component and water quantity.
Yes.
So in the report, annual report, under the fate and transport for harmful algae blooms and phosphorus, there's a bullet that states, this is for ponds, depth of the factor and efficiency, essentially. And I'm curious, are shallower ponds more efficient or are deeper ponds more efficient? So where does the depth play?
Yeah, I can't be a subject matter on all these research projects. And so what I can point you to the research team. We have a recording of the team that just what am I saying? They're giving their final research results next Thursday is the seminar on this project. So I'd encourage you to join. I don't want to answer for them. I'm oversimplifying this study, which was what we call a rapid response project, was under $75,000. The short of it in bullets is ponds do serve as an incubator for harmful algal blooms. They are exporting some populations down the stormwater pipe, but not enough to make a big difference. That's the short of it, right? We want to know. We wanted to know if ponds here are exporting harmful algal blooms to Jarvis Lake, and are they populating? Well, this short study said probably no. Well, good to know. I mean, we didn't know.
Dan, a quick question on that, maybe you'd be able to answer, maybe not, I don't know. But the pond assessment tool, is it targeting, gee, this pond is functioning as expected, is kind of one outcome. Another is, oh, this is not functioning, we need to do something, you know, maybe some maintenance, clean it out or whatever. I mean, how is that tool being, the results being directed?
It's the first one for sure. And don't quote me on this, but I think there are 26 characteristics. It's an Excel spreadsheet based tool because that's what practitioners wanted. There's 26 columns or criteria that they examine to determine if the pond is working effectively. It does not push out, well, this is what you should do then. What it's going to say is it's not working for rate control during a 1-inch 24-hour. That's all it's going to say. It's not going to say how to fix it.
Yep. Thanks.
Yep.
Really good. We've already done our budgeting, so I believe we are.
Yeah, we have the 50,000 in the budget for 2025, and then we'll talk obviously for 2026.
It's well worth the dollar.
Obviously,
Yeah, fantastic work.
Thank you. It's a lot of people involved,
Yeah.
but I would just say, you know, what we've done is continually prioritize the research needs of community, both public and private practitioners, not from the researcher's perspective and not from PCA perspective necessarily, but the practitioners, public and private, to get to the questions they have and the answers they need. And so I think the research priorities for the next 2 years are on page 9 or something like that. And so we'll continually adjust those as we go.
Was that in priority order? Out of curiosity.
What's that?
Was that priority?
No.
Okay.
No.
They were just listed.
Yep.
Thank you. Ah, very good. Any further questions for John?
With the stormwater cleanout stuff, is there anything big that you were missing in the stormwater pond cleanout program? Is there anything big polarized, like you wish you would have got back and could have had a little bit more data here, there, or the next thing, potentially? Because we clean out a fair amount of stormwater ponds, and maybe we can.
and we inspect quite a few.
Right.
Not on the clean out piece. The current studies that are going on have to do with dissolved phosphorus remediation within the pond. Because we're not gonna be able to clean them all out for $150,000-$250,000 a piece. So can we remediate some of the dissolved phosphorus in the pond? So that's one of the research studies we're looking at. The other one, though, we are looking at, and you notice in there is, we are tackling PAHs and looking at remediation. And so we're looking at remediation using earthworms. You'll see that as titled one of the projects. I was very surprised by it, but it scored very high as needs across the state, and it scored very high in research reviews. So people wanted to study this.
So one last question.
Sure.
I know, being from the metro area, I normally just think about the metro. Do these projects reflect the entire state's needs as well?
Yes. Yes. How do I say that? Some of the research studies going on. Okay, so the bioretention media, when that first came in, it was a Twin Cities based project. They're required to have a replication study that's happening up in 2 harbors to represent colder climates on media. So we're trying to make sure that the research we're doing is applicable statewide. Is it always going to be that way? No, but we're trying to do that.
Quick comment on the winter studies, with New Hampshire.
Mhm.
I was really glad to see in the annual report that not only are you looking at more effective use or more effective means of using salt de-icers, but also snow storage, and I'm going down the path that I think Bolton Nook has done some of the designs and start moving, shifting the ship to capture designs of projects in anticipation of how do we better manage snow.
Mhm.
And I think that has a real bright future, so
Yeah.
I was glad to see that in there.
Yep, and that's what we call a rapid response project. This is the third time this research was proposed to us. A lot of improvements in this, but it took a while to think about this. And I think back a few months ago, the repeated salt application in melt, refreeze parking lots of grocery stores and box stores. Think about this in your head. This is where the reapplication of chloride is happening over and over and over again, maybe unnecessarily if we just moved the snow pile. So we're gonna see if that has some validity.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, great to see everyone.
You don't have to run off, but
Okay,
you're welcome.
I'll let you carry through with your administrator's report. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So we're gonna jump back to, I believe it's item 7, yep. District MS4 stormwater pollution prevention. Is that to you, Tina?
Yeah, I don't know if Nicole, if you have, it's Nicole's item actually.
Yeah. As a regulated MS4, the state has specific requirements for us. One of which is to annually notice or provide a public participation opportunity for our overall organization stormwater pollution prevention program. So we typically do that at the June board meeting every year. Usually you would see an annual report from the last year of a summary of our activities that the MCA requires us to submit. So it would be an opportunity for you to review that annual report before I submit it to the state. However, they're working on a new annual report form and have been for the last number of years. So this is another year that we won't be submitting that annual report. So I've included our SWIP application document that you saw last year. Hoping, I don't think we've reported, I mean, we're still tracking all of our activities, but you know, it's been difficult because we haven't been reporting them since I don't think 2020. That's how long we've been waiting for this new report. So yeah, hopefully next year there'll be something new to share.
So we did notice the opportunity for public comment on our website as part of this packet. We don't have anybody here, but
If we're not reporting it, do we need to go through the process just out of curiosity?
yeah, it's just an opportunity. So if nobody's here, we're good to go. It's not a public hearing. We didn't have to
Yeah, we didn't have to close it.
notice it in that way, but I don't see anybody here to speak to.
I have a lot to say.
I was gonna say, unless you, of course,
No, just kidding.
of course, you all can have some comments and questions.
Yeah, so I'll ask a couple questions. One, on illicit discharge and reporting, our website, it says, you know, we have the information to the public through our website. And the website does provide fairly, the public guidance is fairly general. So for instance, report the illicit discharge, but we don't have any additional information. And so I went through the exercise.
The report a problem form?
Yes.
Sure.
So
That
I don't
form is
think-
meant for other things besides.
No, no,
illicit discharge.
and I
Yeah.
understand that.
pretty
So I
much
was
it.
looking for where does the public
Yeah.
report this? And it's not clear. I mean, even for my own city, it's not clear. Some other cities do a better, are much more obvious. This is who you call, or this is what you do. So maybe just a suggestion, do we?
Yeah.
Even if nobody uses it, do we provide like an e-form to say, just here's the information, provide us the location, date, whatever, so that they don't have to like try and figure it out on their own, like I was trying to do, and it wasn't clear.
Well, the good news is that new survey tool that we've been using for the watershed management plan update, we're planning to adapt that and have more clarity on our website for that as a way for the public to do that, so that they could drop a location pin and say, hey, we saw something here.
Perfect.
So that is something that should be coming.
Okay.
Or just to make the form more visible.
Yeah, have a button.
I'm hesitant to have a separate button or form for illicit discharge because a lot of residents don't know that. So we're trying with social media annually to educate people on what an illicit discharge is, but it's kind of like a regulatory term. So the report a problem form we get for all kinds of different things outside of illicit discharge.
Yeah, report a problem would be great. I think the challenge is on the slip, it says, we're trying to do this through our website, through our social media.
Mhm.
And I think that's great, but quite frankly, it's a fairly small audience.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
We could make it easier. though,
Yeah, so
to-
Yeah,
it's
easier to
difficult.
find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll just keep going down my list.
I have one question. You're good.
I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
So the second one, I know this is, hasn't been updated, but at some point in time, you'll need to update Sage Passy contact information.
Yeah, there's some name issues before we submit, might want.
Yeah, this was submitted in 2020.
I know, so just,
Yeah.
and then the last one was on the, it was an interesting one. I think it was number 123 for MCM1, winter snow maintenance. It says, do you have a winter maintenance plan for whoever clears your, conducts winter maintenance for you?
Mhm.
And I thought, well, I don't know if we do, but I thought that would be wonderful, because then that might provide people with some guidance as to how to, I mean, maybe a good template for businesses. This is currently kind of one of those best practices where people are just maybe contractors are being paid, this, by the pound of salt that they put down, rather than.
Yeah, I think we're a little unique in that we don't apply salt to our parking lot, so.
Then that, I mean, even better.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that
Yeah.
it would be great. There was no indication that we do this at this point in time. There's no winter. Do we actually do our own winter maintenance?
Well, we contract with a plow driver to do the plowing.
Removable.
Is there?
We do our own sidewalks and stuff.
Is there any conversation with the contractor that, hey, we'd really like you to put the snow over here? Or do you just leave it to their discretion?
I think Shelley does talk with them about where to push it.
Philly walked with them
Yeah.
from year to year where piles go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty simple thing, but yet it
Mhm.
rarely if ever happens.
Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Just to follow up on the illicit discharge, I read through this, I read through it last year, looked very familiar. I
Mhm.
probably didn't read each and every word and really think it through, but there is mention of the Department of Public Safety, and I'm not suggesting on the website, but I do think it's just, I mean, for me, all of us, but the awareness of the state duty officer.
Mhm.
That's somebody you can call, the phone number, and say, hey, I'm seeing this. Their job is then to follow up with, maybe it's the DNR, maybe it's Department of Health, maybe it's the watershed district, maybe it's 3 of them. I mean, that's a pretty responsible way to just
Mhm.
have something okay.
Yeah, we train all of our staff on duty officer. So usually we would expect that we would get a complaint from a resident and we would take it from there. But yeah, if we have a number to call for residents, if they want to skip us in that process, they can do that, yeah. Again, yeah, we'd have to consult with Lauren, and a lot of people don't know what the duty officer is, but that's part of the problem. So-
I'm just saying that that's
Yeah.
maybe something that
Usually they
being
want
a part
us
of
to
our
take care of that.
educational, outreach, that
Yeah.
just, hey, that is a resource people ought to be aware of.
Yeah, we make contractors aware of it on a weekly basis. But yeah, the average resident kind of just wants to forward along their concerns, and we usually take it from there. But yeah,
Either us or the city, right?
Or the
The
city,
city's
yeah.
probably their first
Right.
person they think to call.
But, I mean, duty officer is there 24/7,
yeah.
Mhm.
so it's whenever, something you see on the weekend, oh,
Yeah,
I gotta remember to call the city or whoever.
That's true, yeah.
yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
So I don't have a bunch of questions in the content, more so just when I read through it, like Mark said, pretty similar. We've done a lot since this was submitted. And so I'm just kind of curious, as you guys look through it, are you keeping record of some of those other exercises that we've done? Like
Yep,
this year would be on that, it's.
yeah, it's difficult to know what the MPCA is gonna request because we don't have the form. So we're tracking all the data we used to track for the old form,
Yeah.
not knowing what to really expect. So there might be
Y'all gotten any kind of inkling on that out of curiosity?
just every year they say we're still.
Okay.
I think a lot of MS4s are starting to get frustrated because it is difficult to track all those activities, and like the expectation would be that we would report on, whenever this form's ready, all the missing years, and that's going to be a Herculean effort, frankly. So, and people have retired, like we've changed staff, so it's going to be a really tough reporting year whenever that first reporting year happens again. But hopefully then we'll get, and they're reissuing a new MS4 permit too, so it's, yeah, I think the MPCA hears from MS4s about this a lot. But no,
Surprised it didn't show up in the resolution then. Just kidding.
I think Mary recently attended a MS4 training, and it was animated. I'll leave it as that.
A lot of good discussion.
Yeah, I don't know, Mary, if you wanted to offer any insight there, but.
Yeah, I think there's just general consensus that it seems a bit unfair to report on multiple consecutive years without just like a clear deadline. So I think just general frustration from municipalities on what exactly is going to be expected of us when it comes time to report. And they're definitely, open to hearing people's complaints, and they're taking that into consideration when reporting is actually due.
Thank you, Mary. Any further questions on action item A? Jumping to action item B, the Coleman Creek flood risk reduction, and this truly is just a request for bid. Okay,
Just
that's you.
send it out for bid, yeah.
Is that you, Brian?
That's me.
Are you walking us through it?
I can walk you through it.
We could, in the interest of time,
Give you a summary or just,
let's do a summary.
this is the same project that we discussed during the regulatory program on the agenda item here. The request is to approve the preliminary plan and hold the bids. The engineer's estimate for this project is $308,000. You can see the uncertainty range there. If you do approve authorization to solicit bids, the tentative schedule for that would be to post for bidding on June 9th. We would have a bid opening about 3 weeks later with the intent to come back with the bid results at the July meeting and share those with you at that point in time. If a low bidder is identified and we award the contract at the July meeting, the construction would occur this summer with substantial completion tentatively scheduled for October of 2025. I'm happy to walk through any of the details of the project or answer any questions you have. But I'll turn it over to you for questions before I start.
Just have one that we've been asking more frequently. Is there anything unique in this when we're thinking about bidders that we want to flag as something that we ask if they have evidence that they've demonstrated this capability before?
There's nothing with this that's unique from the contractor perspective. I will say with this
Or I
one.
mean, like just the construction and the work.
Yeah, so the work elements here, there's nothing that is inherently unique with this one. I'd say when we start talking about unique sites, it's been more on the project development design side here. The construction limits for this site. We're working on property that is owned by North St. Paul, Maplewood, and Ramsey County. So we have been in coordination with all of those entities up until this point, and their comments on are reflected in the plans that are in the packet.
Perfect. Open up other questions.
I just maybe a follow-up there, the two components to this flood reduction. There's the North St. Paul berm, and then there's the work on Coleman Creek below County Road C. Those, by my understanding, they don't seem that complicated or complex type projects. Therefore, you guys are giving it combined, one. You don't see any downfalls to that. That's kind of my question. Are there enough technical differences that I'm just not seeing between the two components?
So these components are very similar in both locations. It is small berms on the order of 1 to a few feet. The intent with both of them is really to make sure that we are directing overflows to the downstream direction and not into a backwater area where water pools adjacent to habitable structures.
Are these the final, is this the final phase of this Coleman Creek?
This is the last phase of this Coleman Creek project. The other one was the work on County Road C, and the reason that was expedited was to make sure that work could get in before the county's paving project. Otherwise, we would have lumped everything.
Directly, y'all have kept us in loop on this flood reduction risk project from day one. I have no problem with it. Do I have a motion to approve the preliminary designs, estimated costs, and proposed project schedule, and direct staff to finalize the design and bidding documents and solicit bid proposals?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. Moving to Wabasso. I know this place really well.
Right, so this project was on the consent agenda for district permit earlier this evening. This is the Lake Wabasso outlet is on the north side of the lake. It is owned and maintained by the county. The watershed district has a cooperative agreement with the county. We were asked to do the design and administer construction of the project. As part of that agreement, Ramsey County is reimbursing the watershed district for all of the construction costs. The purpose of the project is the existing outlet is leaking, seeping water. And so we are essentially replacing the same exact outlet. We're just moving it a few feet further north to avoid the old footings of the existing outlet, which will be left in place. The only notable change to the outlet structure is the current one has a pedestrian bridge across it. The new one will not have a walkway across it. That was removed at the request of the property owner. So otherwise, the outlet will look essentially identical to what is out there today. Similar to the last project, if you approve authorization to solicit bid, we will open bidding June 9th with the intent to bring results back to you at the July meeting. Construction would occur this summer with substantial completion tentatively scheduled for this fall. The engineer's estimate on this one, I believe, is $154,000, a little over $154,000.
Quick question on this one. I understand that the resident requested that the footbridge be removed because of trespassing concerns. And if the lakeside is south, right, of the existing bridge or existing structure, and then the replacement will be north, further away from the lake, further than where the existing structure is and without a footbridge. However, I wasn't quite sure if I was reading the drawing correctly. It seems as though we're removing the footbridge, but adding like a concrete structure
Yeah,
on the bridge that's still closest to the lake, which, I don't know, this is map, C, or drawing C02. So I was just kind of curious, what, I think it's 188 of 228, my.
188.
yeah,
188.
sure. So the plan view there on that particular sheet shows a couple of, it's the plan view of the structure. The concrete part of the structure, there's a wing wall on each side, similar to the current weir. There's a concrete slab with a weir, and then there's you can see the wiggling kind of sheet pile. This new structure will have a sheet pile cutoff, so we want to make sure that water is not seeping through the concrete between the weir and the slab, but the sheet pile cutoff is to make sure water is not seeping around or under it.
So it's open.
It's going to look the same. Nope, it's going to be a concrete weir, but the sheet pile you see is going to be below ground. You won't see that afterwards. That's really just to the groundwater cutoff. Yep.
So when you say there won't be a footbridge, what does that mean?
Yeah. So yep. So I'm gonna there. I know there is an isometric in the memo, but I'm gonna also on PDF page 190.
Yeah.
That same kind of image on the right side there.
No, I understand. That's the, that's the new one.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
I thought this one, the one on 188 is the existing, existing structure. Because it says existing landscape rock, the flagstones, reconstructing the flagstones.
Yeah, so here there's landscaping on either side of the channel. The property owners have flagstones, there's some pavers. And as part of this project, in order to remove the existing structure and then to reconstruct the new one, we're gonna have to be removing some of those pavers. So the hatching here shows the extent or the location of that existing flagstone, and then where we'll be reinstalling at the property owner direction here, basically the flagstone or the pavers that we have to remove, put them back into the ground.
So it'll be flagstones and then a gap. I don't know, it was just kind of cute, it was kind of odd.
The neighbors have the kind of a little walkway, just the decorative stuff that goes along, kind of a buffer from the creek, and then they got a planting, and then just it's probably 2 foot wide, 2.5 feet wide, with just little flat paver stones that just kind of go up to the crossing right now.
Yeah, I remember seeing the photo.
So that is gonna continue to be there.
That'll continue to be there.
Yeah,
Correct.
landscaping up to the.
Correct.
But the railing will be.
The railing will be there. Yep, so the railing, again, that railing is shown on the isometric
190,
190. The difference here, the railing will look, I mean, the same type of railing that's out there today, but instead of opening up over
in the middle.
it'll just go across. That way we make sure there's not a fall, safety hazard there. It'll go across the concrete walls.
Ultimately, there's been a lot of turnover in the neighborhood, and there's been a lot of people just walking, and she's had conversations with people like, hey, I'd prefer you not to do it. You're walking on my backyard. I'm sitting back in here. Had a lot of that access, and then when she asked them, please not do it.
No, I understand. I was just misreading this map as to if we were gonna resolve her trespassing, you guys have it covered. Thanks.
Some of that too is, so this is also the location where we monitor water levels for Lake Wabasso. And so right now we mount equipment onto that footbridge. And so here, this where it can be a metal beam that will go across, so we can still mount equipment to it. So having those pavers, that path is a way for staff to walk without walking in landscaping, to be able to still access that location.
And this outlet weir doesn't have the ability to be varied elevations.
This is a passive structure. the way that this lake functions here, actually, this structure controls the normal water level of the lake. But any discharge out of the lake is very quickly controlled by the culvert under 694 further to the north. So that's where the restriction is. That controls all of the high water levels on Lake Wabasso.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the preliminary designs, estimated costs, and proposed project schedule, and direct staff to finalize the design and bidding documents and advertise the project for bid? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. Okay. 7D, change order. Just, if you don't mind, just a quick thing.
So this is change order 4 for the repairs to the belt line just upstream of the outfall from Mississippi River. This change order is the additional cost to remove concrete slab that was identified below the existing tunnel. So that was unknown during the design process, I think is the only way to phrase that. So again, just limited to the extra additional work required to remove just the portion of concrete that was needed to construct the repairs that were needed for the tunnel.
I only had one question that came to mind when I saw this. Does that concrete slab, did it have a purpose? And if so, do we understand the purpose enough to anticipate other things that might come?
You know, I don't know what the original design of that outfall, that tunnel was. This is an area that certainly the tunnel runs through, but there's also a number of entities that have underground infrastructure in and around that area. I will say that the design of the repair was done to account for a foundation below that tunnel, that pipe that did not require a concrete slab or this to be in place.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to summarize in my understanding. The finding of this doesn't lead us to think that there's other things, knowing associated to that particular subject. Any further questions?
If we approve this change order, would this be similar in vein to the previous unexpected kind of expense that we incurred?
For the anchor.
Yeah, I mean, is this something that we could also add to the?
This one's different in the sense that this concrete slab is not infrastructure that's necessarily owned or maintained by another entity.
But it's under our tunnel.
Under our tunnel,
Okay.
it was. You know, I don't want to speculate on when or why or what
it was necessary.
But it was necessary in order for us to do the repairs for our tunnel.
And how long has the belt line been there? I'm sure we'll find other things. It's just unfortunate that they have such a price tag.
Kind of. Does it have bearing here? Maybe not, but have we heard anything further from the Port Authority on our requests?
I think, did you get the update last month that they were considering it? The last I've heard, and I haven't had any follow-up, is that they were just trying to see if they could pay it yet this year or next year. So it was, the indication was that they were gonna pay the 50,000. It was just a matter of this year or next year.
Okay, they were amenable to it.
No, that, I mean, that's helpful to know from a budgeting standpoint for this change order.
Yep.
Agreed. Okay, do I have a motion to approve change order number 4?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All abstain. Okay, and the report passes. Moving to, I believe, the administrator.
First, we have the
Oh,
attorney report.
yes. Lauren.
Yeah, don't skip me. I've been waiting here so patiently. No, I have a bit of a legislative update for you, which is, always exciting in our world. There's been a bill that's passed affecting the open meeting law and remote attendance. So the pandemic really changed everything about using virtual attendance during an emergency, and then it kind of just went back to the old way. The legislature just passed a new bill that will go into effect on August 1st of this year, where, for our purposes, if board members wanted to join virtually, we no longer have to post notice of their location, and they don't need to be in a public location. So that's a change that's going to be the law as of August 1st. So just to make you aware of that, if you are traveling or you need to have a quorum or whatever, and remote attendance will be an option even if you're not in a public place.
And that counts for quorum as well.
Yes.
Just to clarify that,
Yeah.
and so that means you have voting authority and approval authority remote.
That's right. They've totally they've just wiped it from both the notice requirement and the statute itself.
Great. Lauren, when you get a chance, can you send the bill for that?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can pass
sure
on
will.
the Minnesota watersheds too.
Oh yeah.
Great.
Happily. Good. That's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lauren.
That's fascinating. It takes 5 years to instantiate image like that.
I'm shocked it even happened, actually.
Yeah, I am too. But I mean,
Yeah.
hey, progressive. Boy, I don't. Oh, I
Just
jumped
board
to you too
discussion,
quickly. Board discussion. So, the new process with the legislative community, or legislative committee, is to send out and allow everybody to participate in giving feedback with resolutions. So you might have received an email from Jan. I think it would have been earlier in June, actually recently, with draft resolutions that I believe will be pared down and discussed further. At this point, I think I am an alternative, but alternate, but I'm trying to participate as much as possible. I think, Tina, what we're just looking for now are notes. Is that fair, or
Yeah, so what
suggestions?
Jan was asking for was to have any comments, kind of just preliminary comments, feedback, thoughts that they can compile in anticipation of the August meeting. And what we thought is it might be helpful if all those comments came through the administrators, because your comment here that as a singular board member doesn't hold the same weight as coming from the board as a whole. And many watersheds might not even have time to have a meeting before. So just providing comments to me, but since we are here and I did print them all out for you if you're interested. I think Val wanted to talk through them. And I'm gonna put them up on the screen since they weren't in the packet. I just wanna share my screen so that anybody online can also see what we are referring to.
As she's pulling it up, just to summarize, there are effectively what I would call 3 main themes: working better with the Minnesota DNR and NPCA, find ways to allow funding or participation of WMMOs. That is a unique one. And then again, I'm going to butcher this word, and I apologize, but I'm your marking correctly. Precarious ferns. Bends. You think ferns. That's just the themes that I've seen. Just as an aside, there are some. I have comments. We can start with comments if you'd like, or we
I
can
think
walk
it'd
through
be
the draft.
helpful if we could walk through them just in comments. So as I'm sharing, I can just, unless you want to talk about general comments first, that'd be fine.
No, actually, the way that I have approached reading these might be
a recent way of doing it. So looking at the background really quickly. And then if you jump to page, the second page, it'll go into the goal. And those two pieces are fairly good. So if you want to start with the background quick.
Yeah.
I always find it useful in these meetings when there's a lot of text. Why don't y'all read for a bit and we'll chat.
So this is resolution number 1 that was proposed by Coon Creek Watershed.
What I'll do is I'll try to lock eyes to see if y'all finish reading, just indicate that way. Again, recommending read the background and then turn the page on the goal. That is one of the easier ways of digesting information quickly.
And just to be clear, this won't be your last time to have feedback on this.
I would suggest making it gut reaction feedback initially, not detailed wordsmithing reactions, to be very clear. I've gone through and marked ones that I agree with in terms of the goals and intents, and obviously they're up for discussion. Okay. So when you look at these particular goals, just to tell you how it came across for me, it does feel like instituting policy is probably not the best way of driving better relationships and cooperation with the Minnesota DNR. If that is my opinion. I do think there is some desire to have them clarify what is needed at times of permits, similar to how we have done it in our permit program. I just don't see the utility of driving it through a legislative priority. Instead, I would propose this is a continuing action for us, for Jan to work closer with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. That is my opinion. What do y'all think?
Just a comment, this was there last year too.
Very similar.
Similar, yeah.
The different watershed, but similar.
Similar theme, yeah.
Yeah, I think Jan has been trying to work with the DNR, Jan at Minnesota Watersheds, to work through some of the issues that were brought up at the last discussion around these resolutions. It's been a little slower than I think she'd like, and Tim Kelly from Coon Creek wanted to add to that to help just show that there's still a need and a priority to continue on with that effort. But
at the meeting this year prior to the Capitol, the DNR was there present and did address this issue. I think, I mean, this is, I have to agree with all. It's pushing it through statute isn't the best way to do this. It's a people issue.
It's how it reads to me as well.
Yeah, that's my take as well. I don't think that this is something that should be a statutory change. I have some misgivings over, I don't know if it's in this one or maybe in the second one, where the contention is that if there is a publicly approved, recognized document, i.e. a watershed plan, that ought to carry preeminent whatever standard, and kind of to bully your way through a permitting system on that basis. I don't know, it seems a little odd to me. I may be possibly biased. Having worked, I am done. I retired about a month ago, so I'm no longer Lauren. I don't have a conflict of interest. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like there is a lack of communication between the DNR and the PCA and these projects, these project proponents.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some legitimacy to the concerns that they've had, and I mean, thankfully, we haven't run into the roadblocks they have. You know, in one case, the one from last year, that was over a year after they submitted, and and they still hadn't had their approval yet, so I can understand that would be frustrating when there's nothing in statute that requires them to respond in a timely manner, or what they would deem as a timely manner. So I can understand why they would say it needs to be in statute. We have requirement, you know, we have to respond to applications in a timely manner. We have a, you know, Rule 1599 requires it for our permitting program. So I think they're looking for something reciprocal for the state agents.
Yeah, and it's linked to resolution 2. As I read resolution 2, there was, I think, the applicability to what you were saying, Tina, in terms of just setting more clear criteria, rules, guidance for that. Again, I don't know if statute's the way to do it.
Right.
But that is, to me, feels like a joint effort between the two organizations. Y'all can read 2 if you want. It's very similar to 1, but nuanced. The goals, as you read them, are very similar. If you scroll for the goals, just one more page, Tina, it'll be the next one. Or keep going down. There it is. Our goal for Minnesota Statute 84 is 27.
And for the benefit of people that may be watching online, we will be amending the packet to include these resolutions in there since we're having the discussion. That'll go up tomorrow.
I just want first gut responses. So just to make sure that I track this fine, and that correct me if I'm wrong. But I feel like resolution 1 and 2, there is substance there. Taking too long is a challenge, but I don't know if it's something worth the legislative, using the legislative process to address. What do y'all think?
I don't think either of these warrant that. I think it's worth noting at the watershed conference this past year, in our meeting with our lobbying group, even they looked at the list of how many, like 100 items, and they're like, we really need to focus on 1 to 3.
Yes.
So I don't see these rising to that level of involvement. So I think that's what I'm kind of using as a barometer for a lot of these.
Focus helps the
Yes.
legislative mechanisms.
Yeah, for sure. And so just to kind of follow up on that, the process will be these resolutions will go to that meeting in August where the membership will vote. They get added to our resolutions list, and then the committees will put forth the prioritization, the things that we want them to actively go out and work. It is helpful for them to have things like this kind of in the background, so that if things pop up, they know that, oh yes, this is a priority also, or a concern or an issue with Metro or Minnesota watersheds. So there is a process to, you know, find those ones that float to the top while still having other.
Just to make sure that I follow correctly, so we have an opinion on these resolutions, doesn't mean that we're saying do not.
Right, yeah.
That's what you're communicating.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's really good feedback, and that'll be something. So Jan will take all the comments she receives, legislative committee and the resolutions committee will meet jointly, I think.
Yeah, it is jointly now.
Hear that feedback as they're deciding which resolutions should go forward to the full membership for voting.
Resolution 3 is more focused on public drain system repairs as it pertains to some exemptions. If you, I apologize, there's not a page, but the background is fairly quick to read and clear. To read, and then the legislative mechanisms are on that same page. No, I apologize.
Potential solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made a mistake.
Yeah, staff, if you have input on this.
Yes, I don't know, Ashley, are you tracking along with what we're? Ashley, it comes from Rice Creek with public drainage.
As the drainage manager, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me do a quick review. I know WACA just updated and has some new language for exemptions. I would say in the past, I see 103G, so it's been, yeah, drainage system repairs are tricky. What is the proposed?
He wants to expand it, expand the.
Those repairs.
Yeah.
For expedited approval.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have consistency across organizations and statutes if it's exempted in one.
This is one of those where
Thank you.
I don't know if Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District would serve benefit from this, but it does feel like multiple water management groups across the state would be helped by it.
Yeah, it seems like a streamlining, and a response time, being able to respond quicker. Nothing in this is a red flag to me that we wouldn't be supportive of it, but.
Yeah, that's how I read it. It doesn't so much impact us, but it has wide impact in the rural areas. Again, we'll have another chance to look at it. I just did a pre-review. I think this one, it's not. We have comments for the first two. This one, I didn't really think we should feedback and comments. Looking to, I'm sorry, I'm moving kind of quickly. Resolution 4. If I were to summarize this one as y'all read the background, I believe it's looking at trying to ensure water management commissions or organizations have the ability to play a more steering role in some of these important enhancements that are going down, and also participate and gain favor in the funding.
Yeah, I believe that, I guess I didn't read this real specific, but I heard from Laura that the statute isn't clear. It is clear that it only identifies watershed districts, and so they want to make sure it's expanded to include WMOs as well. It doesn't say water management organizations as a whole.
Their suggested language is more
broad.
Well,
watershed management organization.
So I didn't have comments to it. Palamo could benefit from this if statutes were of that way in the area.
Well, this one is specific to Hennepin County
yes,
too, so, but there are a number of WMOs in Hennepin County, so, on the west side.
I was surprised that it was only Laura who proposed it.
Well, I think they're the only ones in Hennepin County that are members of Minnesota Watersheds. So the other ones are not members, but would also benefit.
Frankly, the note I took right off the bat is this feels like a local issue and it doesn't exclude them, but it seems like they just want to formalize it. Would I prioritize it? Probably not, but I would push back on
Is there any other organization like Minnesota Waters that represents WMOs?
No, and it's actually very new to Minnesota Watersheds too, so.
yeah, this one, right? Or no, the WMO is participating.
So they weren't invited to participate until, I don't remember what year. Been within the last 5 years, last few years, so. When we changed our name, or they changed their name to Minnesota Watersheds from the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts. It was, they invited WMOs to be members.
Oh, that was in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I can't remember what year that was now, but.
Again, I would probably not prioritize it, but it's straightforward. Okay, Middle Snake. At least they did not submit 7.
We didn't have 7 of them, just the one.
Yeah. Aquarius fence. It sounds like it's still a problem.
Yeah, and again, I haven't even read this as closely as I should, but is this about the mapping again, or is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, in the rules.
just get a timeline on having all of them mapped statewide.
Correct. You know, out of
Did it
discussion last
fail
year,
Last year,
I
Yeah.
believe it did.
so he's bringing it back.
Well, I think Mark had some really good points. A lot of folks in the conversation had some really good points. It's challenging to identify. Is that, I believe, was the conclusion
The fence there.
defend are. But yeah, it does seem like they, take another run at it. Comments. I think nothing has changed with the feedback during that particular session last time.
Yeah, I don't know, to me, it just seems like there is clearly an issue here. And there is a need to improve the communication. I don't know that a resolution that would force the DNR to complete an inventory is really going to be effective. Yeah, they certainly could improve their standards, criteria of what constitutes a fen. I actually know DNR has separate from this, been working on that and is near releasing some revised criteria that will, I think, greatly alleviate some of the issues. But even then, it's just, it's gonna be impossible. You gotta have feet on the ground, people that have really very, very high level botanical expertise, of which there are probably a handful in the state, that would recognize these plants to be, hey, indicators of calcareous fins, and it might be a fin complex the size of this building. And it's just, it's not something you can absolutely be certain you've got 100% of them. Now, maybe you say, okay, if we lose a few, maybe that's okay, but personally, I don't think that's best course.
I kind of bucketed this similar to 1 and 2, frankly. Yeah, that is my general take on this particular one. I do applaud the continual elevation, bringing it up, mainly because $800,000 taxpayer money is a lot. So I understand there's multiple reasons to propose resolutions, but this I feel bucket. I am curious, though, there probably are other mechanisms to continue the study and refine the identification. The other thing that did come up was they do have a listing of the things that are supposed to be updated. Again, those aren't legislative mechanisms. Those are just saying, hey, could you adhere to your policies and updating these at the, what is it, 2 or 5 year? I can't remember time frame. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, I can't recall. It's some sort of duration of time.
Right.
So I just wanted to draw your attention to it. We get an opportunity to actually participate earlier, often, and I'm going to do my best to represent in August when this comes through again. So, thank you for the conversation. Just wanted to hit that.
Can I add something to the board discussion topics? Of course. I know in the board action log, we already have chloride use reduction, low salt design, calibration techniques as a topic of discussion. In that topic, if we could, I would be interested if, all of our focus has really been kind of on awareness through education. In that discussion, when we get to it, I would like to discuss maybe how we pivot to action, and what a realistic time frame might be in terms of what we can actually do. In addition to education from the district standpoint. So.
Yeah, that's a good. Well, I'll add that or clarify that in the action log as a.
Yeah,
and
appreciate
then,
that.
yeah, I anticipate
In your
that.
means of action column, just make it.
Thank you. Any other discussions? Thank you for letting us go quickly through the resolutions. It was a good call out. We already covered John, so we are transitioning to administrative report.
Yeah, so have some of my meetings attended and I updated the upcoming meeting dates through the end of the year. So based on what we know right now, including that Minnesota Watershed Special Virtual Meeting, that's August 25th.
We need to still, okay, good.
Yep, so take a look at that. Watershed Week, some of the things that Lauren talked about when she presented to you a couple months ago are on here as well, including our 50th anniversary celebration. And upcoming CAC and board meeting dates. Also our Metro Watershed meeting as well, where we'll probably also have an opportunity to discuss the resolution. So that's on July 15th, if anyone's interested in attending. That one will be all online, virtual. So you'll see that email from me come out in early July for that meeting. I have a couple anniversaries this month, and we talked about the action log. I just wanted to put a note in here about the new vehicle. I wanted to explain that before you saw a negative or an over 100% balance on the vehicle purchasing, and just make sure you didn't have any concerns about that. I didn't anticipate we wouldn't get our 2024 vehicle until 2025, but then also the fact that we'd be able to get one so quickly again in 2025 and not have to wait till 2026. So that we're in the process of securing that vehicle. Wanted you to be aware of that. And then the Minnesota Watersheds update. I'll be going on the summer tour. I don't believe anyone else was able to make it, so I will share back with you what I learned and see when I'm up there. Looking forward to it. We're even going to try and go up to that. Nora's coming with me. She wanted to ride along and spend some time with me, I guess. So she's going to ride along with me. We might even go up to the northernmost point on the angle. So kind of fun going to Canada.
Yeah. Or we could have a day in Kids County, very northwest. That's really cool. Savannah areas.
Have to get some recommendations. Yeah. Good. Anything else for me? That's all I had in my admin report this month.
Do we get to see pictures taken from the Waterfest?
Waterfest. There was a few posted on social media, but I can have Lauren.
I think they posted like 250 on there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm not on social media very often. I should
We'll
know.
have to get,
I can peek there.
get a
I
little
can check
slideshow.
that.
I'm sure we'll get some on our website too. Share that link out when she gets them.
That's fantastic.
Updated. Yeah, it was a great day. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think she's done her like analysis of kind of figuring out some sort of attendance number. It's really hard to do, but I know she does some, estimating based on activities. People have to sign waivers for the activities, so we can get some numbers. We had, well, maybe you guys should give some feedback on the time spent at the district display and the survey.
Mark and Stephanie
Tool.
got enough cross traffic to like color Phelan all blue with the stickers. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I thought it was a great event. Compared to past years, I think the numbers were certainly there. I can't say that there was more than past years. I think it's at least, about the number. It was a great day, so not everybody was available in the pavilion. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Really good conversation.
Yeah, some good conversations. A little bit of time on the floor on the map, and other times, just helping people do their surveys.
Yeah, I think it's always fun to see people. There was one couple, I think the wife worked for Minnehaha, the husband worked for Met Council.
I was wondering actually. He looked familiar, and I couldn't.
And so,
Becky's
so I I just said, it's wonderful. We learn a lot from different watersheds. And he said, well, I don't know, you guys do amazing stuff, so, what he had highlighted was actually, the district being kind of the lead in terms of actually prioritizing, its flood reduction work based on, habitable structures. So kudos.
Yeah.
I guess if there's one thing I was, it took a while to figure out how to, do the spiel. But one thing, I wish we had had the, kind of a highlight or something to invite people to the biking event.
Oh,
So,
I had some at my table.
Yeah, I asked Lauren if there had, why there hadn't been more connection between the watershed week and this event and kind of advertising. She said something to the effect that she found it's really better to kind of focus on one event at a time.
I did have Watershed Week information at the info tent and was handing it out. So there are definitely people will be, and we'll start promoting that more heavily too. So
It's good, because I know with stuff and I did a pre-review, that was something I think both of us were really
Yeah.
interested in, and so I'm happy with something that's mentioned it quite a bit. I'm actually excited about the biking.
yeah.
and I think it was at, one of the greatest delights is to see staff not working, but with their families. So
Yeah, that's-
seeing
yeah.
Pat and Kyle,
That's my favorite.
babies in tow. Like, oh, yeah, so that was really nice.
As a fun word, so I was walking around with clipboard surveys, that was my job, and it was really enjoyable, and I found playing with the kids encouraged people to do surveys. Worked out well.
Yeah.
Distract your kids, take a survey.
Right.
Cool,
Great. That's all I got.
Wonderful. Moving to project and program status reports. I had honestly just one question. We didn't cover, that's fine. I'm at C.
I'd say also. Maybe the same question.
Well, I'll let y'all ask after you.
I'm just curious, there's mention of a June 10 workshop, and I was curious who are the participants?
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if we've actually seen the registration form, so, actually Maggie she's with Minnesota Stormwater. I get
Yes.
confused with all their
Water Resource Center.
Water Resource Center, yeah,
And-
so she reached out to Ashley and I to, like, we're the hosts of it, but her organization actually does all the kind of outreach and, registration, so they're expecting like 50 people.
Up to 60.
Up to 60.
That's room capacity.
Yeah, so a lot of city staff, hopefully a lot of our local, we sent it to our, the Public Works Forum, and so we're hoping we get a lot of local participants, but I would guess all over the metro.
Yeah, I was curious if it was kind of restricted to our kind of public works forum, more specific to us, or if it was broader, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
Build on that. I think just gauging interest might help us reassess the budgeting that we do for this particular stuff, seeing as how we approved in the consent form, I think 2 months in a row, a street sweeping proposal. Seems like it's gaining interest.
They will have surveys for all the registrants. And so we were able to provide input on what we were looking for as well. So there'll be some questions. We've got some questions along those lines of what are you interested in grant dollars and those kinds of things. Very similar to what we did previously in the feasibility. So.
Yeah, I mean, we have
Refreshing.
data now too, right? We'll be talking about it, so.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that I'm interested in is, there's a discussion of technical analysis. So I know we just always curious what conclusions can you draw from that technical analysis?
Yeah, is there a way that maybe a brief summary you can share?
Build on that, and could it be added to the document library? That would be great. I read through the rest of them, and I didn't have anything that popped out, so I'll leave it open to y'all.
I got an update on G. We did clean out the chamber from kind of what it was on there, so we got that stuff. all
See that
cleaned
picture
up.
you bent over?
Yeah, well, I personally didn't clean. I cleaned out a little bit, but we hired it out.
Photo op, Dave?
Yeah. That's just one of those things getting me in the tunnel.
I guess that was something I was kind of thinking about and didn't write it down, but is that a design, is there a design improvement needed?
We looked at that. It's unknown. We inspected kind of, was it Lake Judy that comes into this one? And how it's floaties that get in the
Yeah,
pipe and get over
yeah.
there, float over there, the grade, stuff like that. So we looked at the outlet structure and maybe price out what it looks like to do something like we did with the CMAC, where we have a stump pipe and the water is actually underneath the water line, and then we have like a weir back in the structure. But the dollars and cents to do that versus this took 3-4, I mean, it was $5,000 to do for 3 guys, about 4 hours to do completely. Talking with them, it didn't seem it wasn't hard work to get it done. So how many cleanouts can you do for $50,000? A fair amount for, and then this is gonna be turned over to the city after we do this, and they showed up as we were cleaning it and looking at it in the maintenance and what that looks like, so. We'll see for modifications, but it's, 50/50 of whether it actually makes true sense to do or not.
Sure.
And then-
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, we also have another chamber that we gotta clean out a little bit, very similar to the Frost and Kennard one. Has that same fill, and we're gonna be doing that as part of CIP. So you'll see a change order next month for this work and likely for that other chamber as well.
I was gonna ask that, CC17 is pretty fine, isn't it?
It's a kitty litter. It's like little pieces of,
Yeah.
it's small, but definitely granular. I mean, they just straight to it buckets. Or filled up 5-gallon buckets, heaved it up to the top. It was easy work, which took some time.
I'm curious if any like gradation of that going to a larger stone on top would ease the maintenance to allow those sediments to settle out.
I think the sediments are still gonna cap the top
You think so?
potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the duckweed, I think it's the plants, I think
Yeah.
it's just stuff that kind of comes in there from the stormwater flow from the surface that just fills up over time. And it's just checking it out every couple, we got about a year left, I think, is our responsibility to maintain, so we'll have a pretty good feel for what that looks like, and then the city will have to kind of maintain it moving forward.
Thank you, Jim. Always nice to have you, man. Any other questions on projects?
No, it's a good summer. A lot going on, a lot of projects. Seems like the list grows.
Yeah.
Drink.
Paige keeps me busy.
Oh, great. Water fest is great. Everything right now is just gearing up. The 50th anniversary is gonna be fun. Wonderful. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, manager comments, next month's meeting. To recall, it's not the first week of July, it's the second week of July. Just wanted to make sure, because I know I set a recurring calendar and I had to fix it, so. For others who are like me, there you go.
So on the July 9th meeting, is that, I assume that we would get the packets like that weekend before? or-
You'll get it we're planning to send it out the Wednesday
Yeah, that's what
before
I
the
wanted,
second.
but be just a little earlier.
Yeah, we're shooting for the second.
That-
That'd be very helpful. Wonderful. Motion to adjourn,
A motion to adjourn.
second,
Second.
we are adjourned. Thank y'all.